Hello out there on Spreaker and on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere where you're hearing this. Hi, I'm Goward Horton, and I am co-host, son, and assistant to Miss Carolyn Owens Horton. And we are right now in the Jackson versus Aeg trial. We are in the actual rehearsals. He was wearing several layers of clothing, and it was a hot room, hot lights. Everybody else had normal clothing on for that sort of rehearsal. So the fact that Michael was wearing that type of clothing showed that he was cold. He was cold, colder than usual, or should be, especially when he's on stage with lights, hot lights. Then something was wrong physically. Of course, AEG has been trying to prove that Michael was in perfect health. He had no problems, and besides the actual propofol overdose, then he was in perfect health. But according to this woman's testimony, he was not in perfect health. She talked about that he was very extremely skinny for his normal size. And I think anyone, if you look at the pictures, you can tell that he was skinnier than his normal build. He was very muscular. He's a dancer. He usually had a very, muscular build, even though he was never fat, or anything like that. He always had a good. He was always a good proportion. And of course, if he was dancing on tour, then you might lose some weight. But he was outrageously thin. He was, and I believe, and this is pretty apparent, that this was because of the care of Dr. Murray. Some things were going on in that house that should not have been going on with Dr. Murray. She went on to say that she noticed that Michael on occasion had holes in his shoes, which is ridiculous. Michael Jackson's a millionaire, and he is supposed to have caretakers and people to help him out. And she just noticed little things like that didn't make sense while he's rehearsing. And so she tried to help him with it. And it got to the point where he was coming to rehearsals, some rehearsals, and some rehearsals he wasn't coming. And they knew that was abnormal for Michael, because Michael's a perfectionist. He works, overtime. He rehearses. They were saying 7 hours, in a day on a project. They would just rehearse. Sickness situations throughout his life, and I'll get to that next. But this was definitely, I believe, he was being given some sort of medication outside of propofol by Mr. Murray that was slowly eroding his health. It was not natural. It was not a natural, decay of health. It was unnatural. And I believe he was slowly being murdered. And this is exactly what she testified. She testified that it was like some days he'd be fine, and the next day he would just be totally just not okay. Like he wouldn't even, one day he'd finish the whole song, next day he wouldn't finish the whole song. He wouldn't even come to rehearsal. And this was at Mr. Murray's request. And then Mr. Ortega, she expressed that Mr. Ortega started to get irritated and said that if we don't get through these rehearsals, there won't be a tour, which is true. And he was just saying, but then when he the stuff hit the fan when Michael came to rehearsal one night, and they said he had just been talking to them about just kind of talking not like himself, and he started saying he'd been talking to God a lot. But, not like talking to God in, a wholesome way, but like almost, he was letting them know he was dying. And, and then Mr. Ortega had already testified that, that he had rubbed Michael's feet, and he was kind of shivering, and just how thin Michael was. I believe it was she who said that she talked to Michael Bush, or that might have been Karen Faye, who said that they saw Michael's heart through his skin at one point. I mean, they showed a picture from This Is It where, Michael was wearing the costume they had made for him and how thin he looked, in that white shirt. And she said, she just began to cry she really just started crying on the stand. You guys started breaking down, and she started disclosing how she had told Mr. Ortega and sent letters saying that we need to do something about this, that he's dying, and how he had been acting funny, and how he wasn't acting like himself, and she just had that sense that he was dying, and she tried her best to tell, Mr. Ortega. And Mr. Ortega emailed it desperately to Mr. Phillips, and he told him that, we need to get him a good physician. In other words, he didn't feel that Mr. Conrad Murray was a good physician. He said that also in the Conrad Murray trial. He said that he tried to tell them that. But to no avail. Mr. Phillips did not respond, and neither did the other people really respond. And I just feel like they were co-conspirators in his murder. I really do, because they did not respond. They did not do anything when they were warned. Mr. Phillips did not do anything. I believe that Mr. Ortega and this other young lady were not at fault. I believe they did the best they could. Mr. Ortega has been a friend of Michael's for years, and I believe This Is It is really a good memorial to show you Michael's personality and his genius, and it's a memorial in film, and I love him for that, for bringing that out, because I feel that it was really well done and very tastefully done. Though some may disagree, and that's up to you. If you disagree, that's up to you. That's just my feelings on it. So, in closing, she basically was saying that Michael had been killed, and slowly killed, and that she knew he was dying, and she was trying to get it across to the other people, and they couldn't. And there was no dry eye in the place, at least the fans that were there. Hi Taj, hi everybody out there who was in the court. Love you guys. very, it just confirmed a lot, that it was not health for his age, 50 years old. And then when you look at that, goes into the it's a nice segue into what the coroner was actually saying. The coroner was saying the same thing. He was saying that Michael, from what he saw, he was pretty healthy. He saw some material. I believe he said it was in his ankles that showed that he had great just ankles. Something about his physiology was extremely healthy for a man at 50. Of course, because he danced all the time. He's always dancing. He's always performing. He's around children and nature, and I believe God just blessed him. That keeps you young. So they said just for his age, he was just so healthy. So how could he just die like that? There's no way it could have been natural causes. And he was just talking about how the coroner talked about that he didn't find any too much propofol. It seemed like there was like a timetable he could finally look back in his bloodstream, or I forgot how he said he did it, but there was a timetable and he did not see that it was a heavy concentration of propofol until the last, I guess when he passed, the time of when he passed, then that's when the propofol overdose took place. And to me, that shows you that Conrad Murray did that on purpose, because that means it's not like the media has been saying, like we already know the media lies and twist stuff. But Michael was not asking this man to slowly poison him. He was not asking him every night for propofol. Give me some propofol. Give me some propofol. I'm addicted. That's not what it was. As we learned from the other trial, you can't really get addicted to propofol, because if you just get a little bit too much, you suffocate. So, you can't get addicted like that. Because let him, drown in the propofol, and then he purposely came back and overdosed him. And so that's what the coroner said. That was the most important thing he basically said, was that the propofol was not a continual thing. He also, AEG asked him, do you think that he was in constant pain? I think that's a stupid question. How can you ask the question, is it pain? How much pain would you be in? If I hit you in the spine, let's see how you feel, lady. That's the way I felt when she asked the question. But with all kidding aside, he's obviously in a lot of pain, because anytime you have a spinal injury, that's just extremely painful. It's one of the most sensitive parts in your body, and it has that nerve that runs through the body. I believe it's the median nerve.